My name is Dr. Yusuf Hassan Al-Karni. I am 37 years old, and I was a professor of comparative literature and Middle Eastern studies at King Saud University in Riyadh, one of the most prestigious positions a man could hold. Respected, honored. I had published 3 books, lectured at conferences in Dubai, in Kuwait. I had a corner office overlooking the campus. Students would line up outside my door waiting for consultations. My colleagues envied me. My family was proud. My mother would tell everyone in our village, my son, the professor, Dr. Yusuf, and I wore that title like armor, like protection, believing somehow that my position, my reputation, would keep me safe. But nothing keeps you safe. Not in Saudi Arabia. Not when you're doing what I was doing. I need you to understand who I was before the fear consumed everything, before every shadow became a threat. I was someone. I had a life, a future. Tenure was coming, a promotion to department head. I had dreams of writing more books, of traveling, of maybe, one day, finding a wife, having children, normal dreams, the dreams every man has. But those dreams, they died slowly, suffocated by the weight of secrecy, by the knowledge that every day I woke up could be my last day of freedom. It started 3 years ago. 3 years. God, it feels like a lifetime. Like I've lived entire lifetimes in these 3 years. A student named Ahmed Ibn Khalid, 22 years old, engineering major. He came to my office hours one Tuesday afternoon. I remember it was Tuesday because Tuesdays were always slow. Most students had lab work. And he asked me about Dostoevsky, about the brothers Karamazov, about the Grand Inquisitor. And we talked, just talked, about faith, about doubt, about the human condition. And I saw something in his eyes, something I recognized, because I'd felt it myself years before when I was studying in Jordan. That hunger, that desperate, aching hunger for something more, for truth that went beyond what we were allowed to speak. He came back the next week, and the week after that, and then he asked me, his voice shaking, his hands trembling. He asked me if I believed in Jesus, not as a prophet, but as Lord, as Savior. And I should have lied. I should have turned him away, reported him even, saved myself. But I looked into his eyes, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So I told him, yes, I believe. And we both sat there, in my office, with the door closed, and we wept. We actually wept, because he'd been searching for 2 years, reading banned books, watching smuggled videos on encrypted internet, trying to understand, trying to find someone, anyone, who could help him. That's how it began. Just 2 of us, meeting in my apartment, a small 2-bedroom place in the Al Malka district, northern Riyadh, 4th floor. I chose it specifically because it had 2 exits, 1 main door, and a back stairwell for emergencies. I'd learned to think like that, to always have an escape route, always have a plan. The apartment was sparse, minimal furniture, because I'd learned that the less you have, the less evidence there is. The faster you can disappear if you need to. Ahmed brought 2 friends, Hassan and Omar, both university students, both hungry, both terrified, and we'd meet on Thursday nights, after the evening prayer, after the streets filled with people heading to late dinners, to cafes. When one more person, one more car, wouldn't be noticed. They'd come separately, parking blocks away, checking, always checking, looking over their shoulders, looking for the white Toyota trucks the Mutawa drove, looking for men with long beards and short thobes and eyes that saw everything, judged everything. The heat in Riyadh, even at night, it doesn't let go. It wraps around you like a fist, like it's trying to squeeze the life out of you, especially in summer when it reaches 45, 48 degrees during the day. And my apartment. I couldn't run the air conditioning during meetings, couldn't risk the noise being different, being noticeable. So we'd sit there, sweating, the sweat running down our faces, down our backs, soaking through our thobes, and I'd teach them, whisper to them, about grace, about the cross, about resurrection, about hope, and they'd listen like men dying of thirst listening to someone describe water. 3 became 5, 5 became 8, and I knew, God help me. I knew I should stop. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to stop, to send them away, to protect myself. But how do you turn away someone who's begging, literally begging with tears streaming down their face, to hear about Jesus, to understand the Bible, to find hope in a place where hope is crushed, where questions are punished, where doubt is sin? How do you say no to that? By the end of the first year, there were 23 students coming to my apartment in shifts, different nights, different times. Never a pattern. Patterns get you killed here, or worse than killed. I developed a system, a careful, meticulous system. They'd receive instructions face-to-face only, never by phone, never by text, nothing digital, nothing that could be traced. They'd arrive separately, walking different routes, and I'd stand at my window, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would shatter my ribs, watching, scanning every face on the street below, every vehicle, every shadow, looking for surveillance, for the mutawa, for informants, the paranoia. It becomes part of you. It lives in your chest, in your throat. You can't swallow it down, can't breathe it out. It just sits there, growing, metastasizing. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound, every creak, every footstep in the hallway, every car door slamming on the street, wondering, is this it? Is this the moment they come for me? 3 in the morning? 4 in the morning? That's when they like to come. When you're asleep, vulnerable, when your defenses are down. So I'd stay awake, or I'd sleep for 20 minutes at a time, jolting awake at the smallest sound, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. At the university, I had to pretend, had to act like everything was normal, lecturing about classical Arabic poetry, about modern Saudi literature, while these students, my students, would sit in my classes, and we'd pretend we barely knew each other. A nod, maybe, a brief glance, but nothing more, because the walls have ears there. The other professors, some of them are informants. You never know who. The administrative staff, the janitors even. Anyone could be working for the Mutawa. Anyone could be watching, reporting, building a file on you. There was this one professor, Dr. Ibrahim, taught Islamic studies. He'd look at me sometimes across the faculty lounge, and I'd feel his eyes, calculating, suspicious, and I'd wonder, does he know? Does he suspect? Or am I just paranoid? But you can't afford to dismiss paranoia here. Paranoia keeps you alive. Paranoia is survival. So I'd avoid him, take different routes through the building, eat lunch at different times, always moving, always changing, never predictable. The students kept coming, kept bringing others, friends, siblings, cousins, people they trusted, and by the second year there were 37, and then 42, and then 50 young people, aged 19 to 26, risking everything, their futures, their families, their lives, coming to learn about Jesus in a country where speaking his name as Lord could get you beheaded. And I'd look at them, crammed into my small living room, sitting on the floor, on cushions, packed in like sardines, and I'd feel this overwhelming, crushing weight, because I was responsible for them, for their safety, for their souls, and I was just one man, just a terrified, trembling man who could barely keep himself together. We had to be so careful with materials, with Bibles, with books. I'd ordered them through complex networks, smuggled in shipments of academic textbooks, hidden in false covers, and I kept them in a panel behind my closet, behind the wall. I'd cut out a section myself, plastered it over, painted it, and I'd only bring out 1 or 2 at a time, never enough to prove what we were really doing, and the students would copy passages by hand, memorize verses, because taking anything home was too dangerous. If their families found it, if the Mutawa raided their houses, it would be over for all of us. There was this girl, woman, Fatima bint Abdullah, 24 years old, studying medicine. She'd started coming in the 8th month, and she told me, her voice barely a whisper, that her brother worked for the Committee for the Promotion of Virtue and the Prevention of Vice. Her own brother was Mutawa, and she was sitting in my living room learning about Christ, and I remember thinking, this is insane. This is absolutely insane. We're going to get caught. But she said, with tears in her eyes, she said, I've been searching for 3 years. I've been so alone, so isolated. I can't walk away now. I'd rather die than walk away. The close calls. There were so many close calls. One night, I remember it was October, still hot, still suffocating. We had 12 students in the apartment, and someone knocked on my door. 3 sharp knocks, and everything stopped. 12 people frozen, not breathing, not moving. And my heart, I thought my heart would explode through my chest, would tear through flesh and bone. And I walked to the door, my legs barely holding me, and I looked through the peephole, and it was my neighbor, old Mr. Fahad from across the hall, asking if I had any sugar. Just sugar. He was making tea, and I opened the door just a crack, just enough to hand him a cup of sugar, smiling, acting normal, while 12 people hid in silence behind me. And after he left, after I closed the door, I collapsed, literally collapsed against the wall, sliding down to the floor. And the students, they had to help me up, had to get me water, because I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't function. I started losing weight. Food tasted like ashes, like sand. Everything tasted like fear. My clothes hung off me. My face became gaunt, hollow. My colleagues noticed. Asked if I was sick, and I'd lie, tell them stress, too much work, too many publications, and they'd nod, accept it, move on, never knowing that every night I was committing treason, apostasy, the unforgivable sin, leading Muslims away from Islam, toward Christ, toward what they'd call heresy, toward what they'd call death. My hands developed a tremor, a constant shaking, especially when I was anxious, which was always. I'd be lecturing, writing on the board, and my hand would shake, and I'd have to grip the chalk tighter, or I'd be holding my coffee in the faculty lounge, and the cup would rattle against the saucer, and I'd have to put it down, pretend I was finished, pretend everything was fine, when nothing was fine, when everything was falling apart. The students started calling the meetings the gatherings, never church, never fellowship, just gatherings, neutral language, and we'd sing, but in whispers, hymns in whispered Arabic. Our God is an awesome God. How great thou art. Amazing grace. Songs I'd translated myself, and 50 people whispering praise to Jesus in a country that would kill us for it. I can't describe what that feels like. The beauty and the terror mixed together. The joy and the absolute bone-deep fear. We had to split into smaller groups eventually. 50 people couldn't meet together anymore. Too risky, too noticeable. So we'd meet in groups of 8 or 9, different nights. Monday, some would come. Wednesday, others. Friday, more. And I was teaching, every night, pouring everything I had into them, teaching them to be disciples, teaching them how to survive if I was arrested, how to continue, how to stay hidden, how to keep the faith. Because I knew, we all knew, that time was running out. There were informants everywhere. We knew this. The Mutawa had networks. Regular people, shopkeepers, taxi drivers, university students. Anyone could be working for them, reporting suspicious behavior, gathering information. And we'd hear stories, whispered stories, of other groups being discovered, of people disappearing, of houses raided in the middle of the night, of interrogations that lasted weeks, months, of confessions extracted through methods I don't want to describe. And we'd pray for protection, pray for wisdom, pray that we'd be brave when our time came, because we all knew it would come. It wasn't if, it was when. You could feel it in the air, like electricity before a storm, like the tension before an earthquake. Something was building, something was coming, and we were all waiting, all holding our breath, all preparing for the moment when everything would come crashing down. I started having this recurring nightmare. Every night, the same dream. I'd be teaching, and the door would burst open, and the Mutawa would pour in. 5, 6, 7 of them, with their beards and their sticks and their righteous fury. And they'd grab the students, start beating them, and I'd try to fight, try to protect them. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything. And I'd wake up screaming, actually screaming, my throat raw, my sheets soaked with sweat. And I'd have to check, check the door, check the locks, check the windows, even though I checked them before bed, even though I checked them every night, multiple times. But it was never enough. I was never sure enough, never safe enough. The isolation was suffocating. I couldn't talk to anyone outside the group, couldn't share what I was going through, couldn't ask for help. My family back home, they'd call asking when I'd visit, and I'd make excuses. Too busy, too much work, maybe next year. But the truth was I couldn't leave, couldn't abandon these 50 souls, and I couldn't tell them why, couldn't explain. So I just lied, told them everything was fine, told them I was thriving, while inside I was dying, slowly dying from the pressure, from the fear, from the weight of responsibility. I'd look at my hands sometimes, during the teachings, and I'd think about what they'd do to these hands, the mutawa, during interrogation. I'd heard stories about fingernails pulled out, about bones broken, about electricity, and I'd force the thoughts away, force myself to focus on the faces in front of me, these beautiful, precious faces, so young, so hopeful, so desperate for truth. And I'd teach, pour everything into them, because every moment mattered, every word mattered, because any moment could be our last. The heat, the constant, oppressive heat, it made everything worse, made the fear stick to your skin, made the paranoia thick, suffocating. I'd stand at my window at night, after the students left, watching the empty street below, and the heat would shimmer off the pavement even at midnight, and I'd wonder how much longer, how many more gatherings, how many more chances to teach, to pour into them, to prepare them for what was coming. And then, one Thursday evening, in March, the beginning of spring but still warm, still heavy, I was preparing for that night's gathering. 9 students were coming, and I was setting out water bottles, arranging cushions on the floor, checking the door, checking the locks, checking the window, like always. When my phone rang, it was Khalid, one of my students, and his voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand him. And he said, "Teacher," he said, "Teacher, something's happened. Someone knows about us." And my blood turned to ice. And I said, "What do you mean someone knows?" And he said, "I think I was followed. I think they're watching." I told Khalid, "Cancel tonight. Cancel everything. Tell no one. Use no phones." And I hung up, and my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. It clattered on the tile floor, and I stood there, in my apartment, surrounded by cushions and water bottles arranged for a gathering that would never happen. And I knew it was over. 3 years of secrecy, of careful planning, of paranoia that kept us alive, and it was over. I should have run, should have grabbed my passport, my money, and fled, driven to Bahrain, to the UAE, anywhere. But I couldn't leave the students, couldn't abandon them. So I started making calls, face-to-face only. That was the rule. But there was no time for rules anymore. I called Ahmed, told him to warn everyone, to stay away, to destroy anything, everything, any evidence, any materials, any connection to me, to us, to the gatherings. And his voice, God, his voice was so calm. He said, "Teacher, whatever happens, thank you. Thank you for showing us Jesus." And I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I just hung up. I went to the panel in my closet, pulled out all the Bibles, 15 of them, hidden behind the false wall, and I stared at them. These books that could get me killed, that were about to get me killed. And I thought about burning them, destroying the evidence, but I couldn't burn the Word of God. So I held them against my chest, and I prayed for the first time in hours, days maybe, because I'd been so consumed with fear I'd forgotten to pray. And I asked God, I begged him, protect them, protect the 50. Let this fall on me alone, only me. It was 2:30 in the morning when they came. I was sitting on my couch, still dressed, hadn't even tried to sleep, just sitting there in the dark, waiting, because I knew they were coming. You develop an instinct for these things, a sense, and I heard it. Footsteps, multiple footsteps, heavy boots, in the stairwell, coming up, and my heart stopped, just stopped beating for a moment, and then it started again. racing, pounding, and the footsteps stopped, outside my door, and I heard voices, low, urgent, and I knew. This was it. This was the moment I'd been dreading for 3 years. The pounding on the door was so loud, so violent, like they were trying to break through, and a voice shouted, "Religious police! Open the door! Open now!" And I stood, my legs barely holding me, and I walked to the door, and I thought about not opening it, about making them break it down. But what was the point? So I unlocked it, turned the handle, and it exploded inward. They didn't wait, didn't give me a chance. 6 of them, 7, pouring into my apartment. Men with beards, white thobes, some in uniform, some not, and they grabbed me, hands on my arms, my shoulders, throwing me against the wall, my face pressed into the plaster, and someone was shouting, "Where are they? Where are the others? The apostates? The Christians? Where are they?" And I said nothing, just stayed silent, and they searched, tearing through my apartment, throwing cushions, overturning furniture, and they found them, found the Bibles, hidden in the closet, and one of them, a man with a long beard and cold eyes, he held them up, and he spit, actually spit, and said, "Christian filth, teaching this poison, leading Muslims astray. You'll die for this. You know that. You'll die." And I said, "I know." And he hit me, backhanded me across the face, and I tasted blood, copper and salt. My lips split, bleeding. They cuffed me, plastic zip ties, cutting into my wrists, so tight I could feel my hands going numb. And they dragged me down the stairs, my feet barely touching the ground, and I could see neighbors peeking through cracked doors, watching, some with satisfaction, some with fear, and I was thrown into a truck, a white Toyota, and we drove through empty streets, Riyadh at 3 in the morning, dark, silent, except for the sound of my breathing, rapid, shallow, panicked, the detention center. I don't even know where it was. They put a hood over my head, rough fabric, smelling of sweat and fear, other people's fear, and when they removed it, I was in a room, concrete walls, concrete floor, a single fluorescent light, flickering, buzzing, and a metal chair, bolted to the floor, and they pushed me into it, and the interrogation began. How many? How many students? Give us names, addresses. And I said nothing, and they hit me, fists, open hands. I lost track, my face swelling, my ribs screaming, and still I said nothing, because what could I say? I couldn't give them the 50, couldn't betray them. I'd rather die, and they knew it. They could see it in my eyes, so they changed tactics. The torture, I don't want to describe it, I don't want to remember it, but it's burned into my memory, into my body. They used electricity, clamps on my fingers, on my toes, and the pain was beyond anything, beyond description, white hot, consuming, and I screamed. God help me. I screamed, begged, pleaded, but I didn't give them names. I didn't betray the students. I just kept saying, only me. It was only me. No one else. Just me. Days. I think it was days. I lost track of time in that room. No windows, no clock, just the flickering light, and the pain, and the questions, over and over, until the words stopped making sense, until reality became fluid, dreamlike, nightmarish, and I'd pass out, and they'd throw water on me, cold water, waking me, and it would start again. They showed me documents, printouts, surveillance photos. They had been watching, for months, maybe longer. They had photos of students entering my building, leaving. They had evidence, but they didn't have names, didn't have the full network, and I wouldn't give it to them. I couldn't. So they kept going, kept pushing, kept breaking me down piece by piece. My cell, when they finally threw me in a cell, it was worse than the interrogation room, because at least there I had something to focus on, the pain, the questions. But in the cell, it was just nothing. A concrete box, 2 meters by 3 meters, a hole in the floor for a toilet, no bed, no blanket, just concrete, And the smell, God, the smell of human waste, of sweat, of despair. It soaked into everything, into my skin, into my lungs. I couldn't stand fully. My ribs were broken, maybe 3, maybe 4. Every breath was agony. So I'd sit against the wall, knees pulled to my chest, trying to breathe shallow, trying not to move. And the heat, even in the cell, the heat was suffocating. No air conditioning, no ventilation, just thick, heavy air that pressed down on you, suffocated you. The darkness was almost total, a thin strip of light under the door. That was all. And I'd stare at it, at that strip of light, and I'd pray, whisper prayers, because speaking aloud hurt too much. Jesus, Jesus help me, protect them, the 50, keep them safe. And I'd think about them, about Ahmed, about Fatima with her Mutawa brother, about Hassan and Omar, about all of them, and I'd pray they'd escaped, that they destroyed the evidence, that they were safe. Food came once a day, maybe, I couldn't tell. No clock, no routine, just a slot in the door opening, a tray sliding through, rice, sometimes, bread, water. I'd try to eat, but my jaw was swollen, my teeth loose, and swallowing was torture. So I'd force down what I could and leave the rest, and I'd lose track of days, of time, of everything except pain and fear and prayer. The other prisoners, I could hear them sometimes, through the walls, screaming, crying, praying, and I'd wonder what they'd done, what crimes warranted this treatment, this hell, and I'd wonder if any of them were Christians, other believers, other people who'd chosen Christ over safety, and I'd pray for them too, whoever they were, whatever they'd done, because we were all suffering together, all trapped in this concrete tomb together. My interrogator, the one with the cold eyes, he'd come to my cell sometimes, open the door, stand there, looking down at me, and he'd say, "You're going to die. You know this. The judge will sentence you to death, beheading, in public, in Dira Square. Everyone will watch. Everyone will see what happens to apostates, to those who lead Muslims astray. Your head will roll, your blood will soak the ground, and this is justice, this is Allah's will." And I'd look up at him, through swollen eyes, through pain and exhaustion, and I'd say, "Jesus loves you, he died for you," and he'd spit on me, and leave, and lock the door, and I'd be alone again in the darkness. The trial. They finally took me to trial. I don't know how long I'd been in that cell. Weeks, maybe months. I'd lost weight, lost teeth. My hair was matted, my beard grown long. I could barely walk. 2 guards had to half carry me into the courtroom, and it wasn't like Western courts, no jury, no real defense, just a judge, an elderly man with a white beard and glasses, sitting elevated, looking down at me with disgust. The charges: teaching Christianity, converting Muslims, apostasy, possessing banned religious materials, corrupting youth, leading them away from Islam. Each charge read aloud, methodically, and I stood there, swaying, trying to stay conscious, trying to listen. And when they asked, "How do you plead?" I said, "Guilty. I'm guilty of all of it." And there was a murmur in the courtroom. Spectators, other prisoners' families, religious officials, all watching, judging, and the prosecutor. He smiled, actually smiled, because I'd made his job easy. The prosecutor spoke about the danger of apostasy, about the corruption of youth, about how Islam must be protected, must be defended against Western influence, against Christian missionaries, against people like me, and he called me a traitor, a heretic, a devil, and he demanded the maximum penalty: death, beheading, public execution, to send a message, to warn others. And I listened, and I felt nothing, just emptiness, just exhaustion, because I'd known, had always known, this was how it would end. My defense: I had a lawyer, court-appointed. He said nothing, asked no questions, presented no evidence, just sat there, going through the motions. Because there was no defense, no argument, I'd confessed. I'd admitted everything, and under Saudi law, under their interpretation of Sharia, the penalty for apostasy is death. It's not negotiable. It's not debatable. It just is. The judge, he looked at me, and he asked, Do you renounce Christianity and return to Islam? And I knew this was my chance, my only chance to live. All I had to do was say yes. Say I renounced Jesus. Say I was wrong, misguided, and they'd let me live. Maybe prison, maybe deportation, but life. But I looked at him, at this man who held my life in his hands, and I said, no, I will not renounce Jesus Christ. He is Lord. He is Savior. He is the Son of God, and I will follow him to death. And beyond, the silence. The silence in that courtroom was absolute, complete. Everyone staring, shocked maybe, that I'd chosen death, chosen it willingly. And the judge, his face hardened, and he said, then you leave me no choice. You are guilty of apostasy, of leading Muslims away from the true faith, of corrupting the youth of this nation, and the sentence is death, by beheading, to be carried out in public, in Dira Square, on Friday, after the noon prayer. May Allah have mercy on your soul, because I will not. They took me back to my cell, the guards rougher now, angry, because I'd wasted everyone's time, refused the chance to recant, chosen death over sense, and they threw me inside, and locked the door, and I collapsed, fell to the concrete floor, and I wept like I'd never wept before, not from fear, though God knows I was terrified, but from grief, from sorrow for my students, for my family, who would learn I'd died in disgrace, for my mother, who would have to bury her son, for all the years I wouldn't live, all the moments I'd miss, and I cried out to God, to Jesus, why? Why did you let this happen? Why couldn't we continue? Why couldn't the 50 learn, grow, spread the gospel? Why does it end like this? In blood, in death, in failure. And the answer? There was no answer. Just silence. Just the darkness of my cell. Just the knowledge that in 3 days, I would be taken to Dira Square, the place they call Chop Chop Square, where executions happen every Friday, where my head would be severed from my body, where I would die, publicly, shamefully, and there was nothing I could do, nothing I could say, nothing that would change it. I was going to die, and I had to find a way, some way, to face it with courage, with faith, with the knowledge that Jesus was with me, even here, even in this hell, even unto death. Thursday night, the night before, the last night of my life, I lay on the concrete floor of my cell, my body broken, my spirit crushed, and the darkness was absolute, complete, suffocating. Not just the absence of light, but the presence of something else, something heavy, something that pressed down on my chest, on my soul. Despair. That's what it was. Pure, undiluted despair. I could smell it. The cell, damp concrete, human waste, sweat, fear, the smell of death, because people had died here, in this very cell maybe, and tomorrow I would join them. Tomorrow at noon, after the Friday prayer, they would take me to Dira Square, and a man with a sword, a ceremonial sword, would sever my head from my body, in front of a crowd, in front of cameras, and my mother would see it, my family would see it. The world would see Dr. Yusuf Hassan Al-Qarni, the apostate, the heretic, die in shame. I tried to count the hours. How many hours left? It was maybe 10 at night, maybe 11. So 14 hours, 13 hours, 12 hours until dawn, and then the morning, and then noon, and then nothing. Oblivion, or heaven. I believed in heaven, believed Jesus was waiting, but the fear was still there, because dying is terrifying no matter what you believe, no matter how strong your faith. The act of dying, of ceasing to exist in this body, is primal terror. My ribs screamed with every breath, broken, fractured, and my hands. I couldn't feel my fingers anymore. They'd done things to my hands during interrogation, things I don't want to remember, and my face, swollen, one eye barely opening, and I was so thirsty, so desperately thirsty. They'd given me water hours ago. Or was it days ago? Time had no meaning anymore. Just the countdown, just the ticking clock in my head, marking off the remaining hours, the remaining minutes of my life. I thought about the students, the 50. I'd heard nothing. Didn't know if they'd been arrested, if they were in cells like this, if they were suffering like I was suffering. Or if they'd escaped. If Ahmed and Hassan and Omar and Fatima, if they were free, if they were safe. Whispered into the darkness. Keep them safe. Please God. Please Jesus. Let me be enough. Let my death be enough. Don't let them suffer. Don't let them die. But the prayer felt empty. Felt like words bouncing off concrete walls, going nowhere. And I wondered if God was even listening, if he cared, if he'd abandoned me here, in this cell, in this darkness, to die alone, forgotten. And the bitterness rose up in me. Because I'd given everything, sacrificed everything, my career, my future, my life, for him, for the gospel, for those 50 students. And this was the reward: torture, execution, shame. I could hear sounds, through the walls, through the door, other prisoners, some crying, some praying, some screaming, and guards, heavy footsteps, keys jangling, doors slamming, and I wondered if they'd come for me early. If they'd decided not to wait until tomorrow, just come now, drag me out, end it. And part of me wanted that, wanted it to be over, wanted to stop waiting, stop fearing, just finish it. The concrete floor was cold, despite the heat, despite the suffocating air. The floor was cold against my cheek, and I lay there, curled up, fetal position, trying to make myself small, trying to disappear. And I thought about my childhood, about my mother, about running through fields in our village, about being young, innocent, before I knew about death, before I knew about fear. And I wept for that boy, for the man I'd become, for the life I'd never live. And then, around midnight, maybe later, I don't know, I started to pray, really pray, not just words, not just desperate pleading, but from somewhere deeper, from my soul, from the core of my being. And I said, Jesus, if you're real, if you're really Lord, if you really rose from the dead, then I need you now. I need you here, in this cell, in this darkness, because I can't do this alone. I can't face tomorrow alone. I can't die alone. I need you. I need to know you're with me, that this wasn't for nothing, that those 3 years mattered, that the 50 students matter, that I matter to you. And I waited, in the silence, in the darkness, for an answer, for anything, a thought, a feeling, a whisper, but nothing came. Just the same oppressive darkness, the same suffocating fear, and I felt abandoned, truly abandoned. And I cried out, actually cried out loud, not caring if God's heard, not caring about anything anymore. I cried, where are you? Where are you, Jesus? I followed you. I taught your name. I gave everything. And you're silent. You're absent. You've left me here to die alone. Where are you? And then, something changed. I can't explain it. Can't describe it adequately. But the air in the cell shifted, became different, lighter somehow, warmer. And I felt it, felt something, a presence. And I thought maybe I was dying. Maybe this was my brain shutting down, hallucinating. But no, this was real. This was tangible. I could feel it on my skin, in my lungs. This warmth, this love. That's the only word. Love. Filling that space, pouring into that cell. Light began to appear. Not from the door, not from any physical source. Just appearing, manifesting, in the corner of my cell. Soft at first, like dawn, breaking, but growing, intensifying, becoming brighter, until I had to close my eyes, had to shield my face with my broken hands, because it was too much, too bright, but not painful, not harsh, just overwhelming, pure light, white light, golden light, light that shouldn't exist, couldn't exist, in this windowless concrete tomb. And the warmth increased, spread, wrapped around me like a blanket, like arms, like an embrace. And I was shaking, trembling, not from fear, but from awe, from shock, from the impossibility of what was happening. And I heard, or felt, I don't know which, a voice, not audible, not external, but inside me, inside my mind, inside my soul. And it said, peace, be still. I am with you. I have always been with you. I will never leave you. And I opened my eyes, squinting against the light, and I saw Him. I saw Jesus, standing in my cell, in that impossible light, and he was beautiful. That's not the right word. There is no right word. Glorious, radiant, but also familiar, like I'd known him my whole life, like I was seeing someone I'd always known but never met. And his eyes looked at me with such love, such compassion, such understanding, that I broke, completely broke, and I wept, sobbed, like a child. He moved toward me, or maybe I moved toward him, I don't know, but suddenly he was closer, kneeling beside me, on the filthy concrete floor of my cell, and he reached out, his hand, and touched my face, my broken, unswollen face, and the touch was electric, but gentle, and warmth spread from that touch, through my skin, through my bones, through every cell of my body, and the pain, the excruciating pain I'd been living with for weeks, it vanished, just gone, like it had never been, and he spoke, his voice now audible, real, resonant, filling the cell. He said, "Yusuf, my beloved, my faithful servant, you have not been abandoned. You have not been forgotten. I have been with you in every moment, in every beating, in every question, in every hour of darkness. I have carried you, and I will not let you die. Not here, not now. Your work is not finished. The 50 need you. The kingdom needs you." And I held up my hands, my mangled hands, and I said, "But Lord, the sentence, the execution, tomorrow. How can you stop it?" And he smiled, actually smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds, like joy personified. And he said, "Have you forgotten? I conquered death. I broke the chains of the grave. Do you think prison walls can contain me? Do you think executioners can thwart my will? Watch and believe." And he stood, and he raised his hands, and the light exploded, filled every corner of the cell, and I heard it, metal, scraping, grinding, and I looked, and the door, the locked, bolted door of my cell, it was opening, swinging open, slowly, on its own. No key, no guard, just opening. And the chains. I hadn't noticed, but there were chains on my ankles. I'd worn them so long I'd stopped feeling them, and they just fell off, clattering to the floor, the metal ringing against concrete. And I stared at my ankles, at the open door, at Jesus, and I said, "I don't understand. What's happening? What do I do?" And he said, Walk out of this place, and fear not, my angels
For I go
surround
before
you. No one will see you. No one will stop you. Go to your students. Go and teach. Go and testify to what you have seen, what you have experienced. Tell them, tell the world, that I am Lord, that I am alive, that I save, even from death itself. And I tried to stand, my legs shaking, my body weak from weeks of torture and starvation, and he helped me, his hands supporting me, lifting me, and strength, supernatural strength, flowed into me, through me, and I actually stood, without pain, without agony, and I looked at him, at his face, and I saw the scars, saw the nail prints in his hands, saw the wound in his side, and I understood that he knew suffering, knew torture, knew death, and had conquered it all, for me, for the 50, for everyone. And he said, "Go now, quickly," and I stumbled, walked, toward the open door, and I looked back at him, and he was still there, still radiant, still glorious, and he nodded, encouraging me, and I stepped through the door, into the corridor, and it was empty, no guards, no prisoners, just silence and dim fluorescent lights, and I walked down that corridor, expecting at any moment to be grabbed, to be stopped, to be beaten and dragged back, but nothing, no one, just empty hallways. I passed cell doors, dozens of them, and I could hear prisoners inside, could hear their suffering, and I wanted to open them all, to free everyone, but I knew I had to leave, had to survive, had to testify, so I kept walking, following some instinct, some guidance, turning left. then right, then left again, through a maze of corridors, and every door I came to, every locked door, it opened, just opened, before I reached it, like an invisible hand was clearing the path, and I was crying, tears streaming down my face, because this was impossible, this was miraculous, this was God. And then, the final door, the exit, heavy metal, electronically locked, and I stood before it, wondering if this was where it ended, where the miracle stopped. But no, the lock clicked, hummed, and the door swung open, and cool night air, fresh air, hit my face, and I breathed deeply for the first time in weeks, and I stepped out, months into the night, into freedom, and I looked back at the prison, that concrete fortress, and I whispered, thank you, Jesus, thank you, and I ran, stumbled really, my body still weak, still recovering, but I ran, into the darkness of Riyadh, into the empty streets, and I didn't know where I was going, didn't have a plan, but I ran, because I was free, impossibly, miraculously, supernaturally, free, and Jesus had saved me, had opened my cell, had walked me out of death itself, and I was alive, alive to tell the story, alive to testify, alive to continue teaching those 50 students, those precious 50, about the God who breaks chains, who opens prison doors, who conquers death, who saves, even in Saudi Arabia, even in the darkest places, even when all hope is lost, he saves.